Hello and welcome to another episode of Observation Conversations, where today we're back after our end of summer hiatus. In traditional Observation Conversations fashion, we're only a week late, but we're very excited to be back. And today we will be discussing the most recent series of one of our absolute favorite shows on television, Rick and Morty. I'm joined as always by my co-host and the best decoy around, Reid Chrisman. How you doing, Reid?
I'm doing well, my friend. Today is a good day because we are discussing a great show that, in my opinion, has had one of its best seasons yet.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, this is very exciting. We've been looking forward to doing this episode for a while. Of course, that means we will not be discussing Shang-Chi this week. That will be coming next week, where we have a very special episode planned. Excited to talk about this. But the 5th season of Rick and Morty just wrapped up, and we are just desperate to talk about it. And because we are going to be reviewing all 10 episodes of this season, we have a lot to cover. So we're not going to waste a lot of time before we get into full spoilers. But before we do, I do want us to answer one essential question, and then we'll get into our episode-by-episode review. Sure. And that is, in your opinion, is the 5th season of Rick and Morty the best season?
Oh. That's a tough question. I would say second best. I can't tell you what the best is. I'd have to go back and review each season, but I feel like it's probably the second best. It's really good in my opinion. Really good blend of kind of serialized episode and just kind of episodic adventures. So
yeah, and I've been thinking about this, and I've been thinking about this all throughout the season, and I would agree with you that I don't think this is the best season of Rick and Morty, but I think it is close. I think it could very much make a case for runner-up. I think for me, the best season of Rick and Morty is still season 3. Was still the pinnacle. That's still for me the pinnacle of the show. Almost every episode in that season, you go back and rewatch those episodes, is a home run. You just named a couple of standouts: the Rick Shank Redemption, Pickle Rick, Vindicators 3, Rest and Rick-laxation, Morty's Mind Blowers. Rick Chury and Morty date. Like, some of the absolute best episodes of the series were concentrated in season 3. And of course, that's not to mention what is, in my opinion, still the best overall episode of the series, the Rick Lantis mix-up, better known as Tales from the Citadel. Yeah, that remains
all-time favorite episode for sure.
Yeah, one of the best episodes of television just overall in recent years. Honestly, I go back and rewatch that episode, and it is shocking, almost impossible to wrap your head around how much storytelling they fit into under 25 minutes. It's insane. It really is. It's like a 2-hour movie's worth of plot.
Honestly, it's a writing lesson for, people who are out there making new shows. It's like, this is how you do concise, effective storytelling. It doesn't honestly need to be an hour long to tell the story. It's like, that was so good.
3 deep, fully fleshed out storylines, which were both funny and poignant and topical and everything else.
Interconnected too.
And all interconnected.
All related to the same general theme. So
in 25 minutes. It's incredible to me. As you said, a masterclass in writing. So for me, season 3 is still the pinnacle, but this is very close. And this season had some standout episodes. I definitely feel like it was a step up from season 4, which was good, but kind of hit or miss. For me, this feels more like season 2, where you had a lot of standout episodes, some which kind of fell flat, but on the most part, very strong. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it. This was a great season of television overall. One of the best seasons of this show. I think the second best, or tied for second best. Should we just get into it? Because we've got a lot of show to talk about.
Yeah, so how are we doing this? Are we doing episode and analysis of that episode, or are we just going to recap the series and then jump into our favorite moments? How do you want to handle this?
So what I was thinking is we each wrote several synopses of the various episodes. So I thought we could go episode by episode, just doing a brief review of the plot and then rating that, giving that a little bit of analysis and a rating. And then at the end we can do a bigger picture where, the state of Rick and Morty, so to speak, and then we'll rank our favorite episodes from best to worst.
Oof, okay.
And be comprehensive with it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so with that, I think
I
you
guess
have.
I'll kick us off with the well, not the pilot, but the first episode of season 5. Um which was a fun one because it kind of established the ongoing theme of season 5, which was Morty's independence from Rick.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least his desire to be independent and what that means for Morty.
Yeah, this was Mort Dinner Rick Andre, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, title playing on an older movie called My Dinner with Andre, which is literally a movie about two friends catching up over dinner.
Right, yeah.
Haven't seen it, don't plan to based on that synopsis, but this episode is very entertaining and very different from that. So we start off cold open. Rick is nearly dead, and Morty is saving him. They narrowly escape, but crash land in the ocean. And while they're falling, Morty calls Jessica because he thinks he's about to die. It's like, hey, I never got to tell you how I feel. I always wanted to hang out. And she's like, sure, let's do it. But because they landed in the ocean, it turns out Rick had an old nemesis called Mr. Nimbus, king of the ocean. And now they're stuck in the situation where Rick has to patch things up and get Mr. Nimbus to sign a peace treaty. And Morty is trying to take care of his date, Jessica. And the whole thing revolves around Morty getting wine from this, essentially a sci-fi Narnia portal. I really liked what they did with this, where, just an incredible amount of world building. Because every time he steps into the portal, some amount of time has changed. And we go from just like a humble farmer. The humble farmer, helps Morty with the wine and then returns to the portal only to find that so much time has passed that his wife has died and his son had been born, and was seeking vengeance, and then declared vengeance on the dark boy from the other realm. And you just see over time, it's like these kind of different civilizations and empires rise and fall all around the idea of slaying this boy that may or may not exist. Because you have the elders who have seen it and the newer generation who hasn't. Then the elders get killed off by the new generation, and then that new generation encounters the boy, and the cycle kind of continues.
Yeah, and they're all descended from that same original clan, and they just go generation to generation, getting more complex.
It's so funny. It eventually gets to the point where they're in like the sci-fi version of the civilization, and they train one of the young men to like travel to Morty's universe. So they open up the portal from their side and send him to attack Morty. And he ends up, taking Jessica with him. And, of course, all this shenanigan fucks with the peace treaty that's going on. And, Morty goes in, guns a-blazing, trying to stop them, gets defeated, escapes with Jessica, but then they get captured, called to Rick. Rick goes in to saves them, also gets defeated. And in the end, they're all saved by Mr. Nimbus, who we learn is, although he was officially a nemesis, at one time it seems like he and Rick were friends. Mr. Nimbus seems to know about Diane, who is, or was Rick's wife. He seems to know about Kyle, which was some kind of assistant he had before Morty. And then, of course, it ends on a joke where Summer comes back with the conch, which makes Mr. Nimbus really strong, and he just beats the shit out of Rick, and that's it. In classic Rick and Morty fashion.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
I loved this episode. I'm guessing you really liked it too.
I was a big fan of it because it was, it was a really good blend. Rick and Morty oftentimes either does, one episode that's just all plot.
Mhm.
And then, a bunch of episodes that are just all nonsense. And this was one of the few episodes that really blends the two together quite well. Because it does seem nonsensical, but, you're establishing a new dynamic between Rick and Morty. You're establishing backstory for Rick. And just the world building they did with this fucking Narnia world was so good and so funny. Yeah, one of my favorite episodes of the series. For sure.
Yeah, there is a lot to like about Mort Dinner, Rick Andre, and I think one of the main things is it's reminiscent of the Rick Lantis mix-up in a lot of ways, because it's not quite
focusing on a different world. It's focusing on like a different
exactly.
civilization.
Yeah, of course, it's not quite on the level of Tales from the Citadel, but what's great about it is it's this multi-layered, multi-generational story set in this different realm where time passes very differently than time in our realm. And so while you have this very mundane situation playing out in the Smith household with Rick hosting Mr. Nimbus, which we'll talk about Mr. Nimbus in a minute. I want to have some things I want to say about him. You have this incredibly intricate generational storyline revolving these like humanoid cow people as they go from, like, as you said, this humble farmstead to this feudal society to this sci-fi civilization. And with every generation, the tales of this dark child gets passed down. Morty, who returns periodically and is this harbinger of doom, and so they build their entire society around preparing for his return so that they might better defeat him. And you have kings and sorcerers and like a Terminator time travel story, and it's incredible. It's absolutely fantastic, just following the progression of this civilization that's just built entirely around defeating Morty, who only ever went there in the first place to
get wine.
Yeah, age some wine faster, for Rick.
I will say he could have let it sit and then just brought all the crates back at once, instead of just one bottle at a time, because I think wine can only age for so long.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point it'll go. I don't know. I don't drink wine, but
yeah.
But it was such a funny premise that that kind of world, you could make a whole movie around that.
Oh, honestly, yeah. Honestly.
But because it's Rick and Morty, it's just kind of like a bunch of throwaway jokes, but it still works so well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's how you could tell a great episode of Rick and Morty, when the premise of that episode could fill out an entire season if they wanted to do it. And you could easily do that with this. And that's just one side of it. On the other side of it, you also have, of course, Rick dealing with Mr. Nimbus, who I love Mr. Nimbus so much. I mean,
Mr. Nimbus.
What a great episode to open the season on, because you have this Mr. Nimbus guy who is just so, mustache twirling and idiosyncratic and weird. He's the master of the ocean, like an Aquaman type guy, but he's also controller of cops. He
controls the police.
Yeah, he just has this random grab bag of powers. It's fascinating because, of course, as we know, Rick is the smartest, most powerful being in this universe, and yet he has this odd respect for Mr. Nimbus. You wouldn't think that someone like a Mr. Nimbus would bother him, but clearly he sees him as an equal or a near equal.
I think he's embarrassed to have seen him as an equal at one point in time. Is more appropriate. I mean, the episode ends with, Rick kind of yelling at Mr. Nimbus, saying yeah, flood the world, do anything. You never do anything, and it's you're not much of a nemesis if you're just never around and only telling people that you're my nemesis. And it's Mr. Nimbus is an embarrassment to Rick, but Mr. Nimbus also says he's the only one who sees Rick for what he truly is, a hollow shell of his former self.
It's true. It's true.
Do you think we're gonna see more of him in season 6? Because I kind of hope he returns.
Yeah, I I don't want to place any bets on season 6 specifically, because as we've seen from the Rick and Morty writers room, they, even if it's an idea that they like and they do bring back eventually, sometimes you probably won't see that for a season or more.
Yeah.
I think the one really notable exception is, in terms of a major plot point, Clone Beth is the only one that where we had season 4 into season 5. But of course, it took us 2 seasons to get back to the Citadel of Ricks. We didn't get a lot from the Federation this season, or anything really. I mean, they popped up very briefly in, I believe it was episode 5, which we'll talk about. But other than that, they don't really Oh, and also episode 8. But other than that, they don't really factor in plot-wise this season. So you'll probably see more of them next time. In season 6, but even with a big idea like that, I wouldn't bet on him coming back immediately, but eventually I think we have to see Mr. Nimbus again. Like he's just too fantastic. So loved Mr. Nimbus, loved the plot line of the generations passing down and just that whole multi-layered, multi-generational story. Fantastic. And also we have to mention Jessica becomes a time god. So that was interesting. The first and last time we really see Jessica this season. So I guess she really did mean it when she said she's a time god now. At least she perceives herself to be a time god. Do you think she's going to be a love interest again for Morty, or is she just done?
Don't know. Because I mean, as we'll discuss later, there's the whole Planetina episode where Morty falls in love with a completely different woman. But she does say like there will be other moments. I'm sure the writers will bring her back in some way, but I don't think she's going to be a consistent love interest for Morty. I think they're going to kind of step away from that will they, won't they, and instead focus on Morty kind of exploring other relationships. Because that seems to be a little bit more impactful. Or he just might not, and it's solely going to be about his relationship with Rick.
Yeah, and that's
just not going to be any time for Morty.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I found that was very interesting as well. From the we get that little inside the episode segment after the episode airs on Adult Swim, and one of the things that Dan Harmon was saying was that in the writers' room they made a point of the point had been raised and it was agreed that characters like Jessica should get a little bit more agency going forward, and so I'm guessing this was kind of the first step in that, literally making her a time god, and then probably in subsequent seasons when we see her, she'll probably be less of a love interest, as you were saying, and more of a plot propelling
adventure companion.
Exactly. A bit like a Bruce Chatback, if you will, who we'll discuss. But Mort Dinner, Rick Andre, what would you rate this episode?
Probably 8 out of 10.
Okay.
7, 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, well, which is it? 7 or 8?
I'm gonna say 8.
Okay.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
For me, I really loved this episode, and I thought it was a pitch perfect way to start the season. I'm going to go ahead and say, honestly, I'm going to say this is a 10 out of 10 episode. I am. This is a really good episode. And
do you think it's on par with Tales from the Citadel?
No. But that's, but that's the thing about the scale is,
because for me that's my 10 out of 10, so I'm basing it on that.
Yeah, and honestly, that's why sometimes I psych myself out of giving things 10 out of 10s, because when you have that one gold standard, it's like, well, are you equating it to that? But for me, while for me, and I've explained this in the past on the show, for me, a 10 out of 10 is a benchmark episode. So even though I wouldn't say that this was on the level of Tales from the Citadel, it is still definitely a benchmark episode that I would go back to and reference other Rick and Morty episodes against. So even when you give multiple episodes 10 out of 10s, or multiple anythings 10 out of 10s within the same category, it's not exactly saying that they're equal. It's just saying that they're all benchmarks for quality, at least for me. That's how I kind of reconcile it. So for me, this is a 10 out of 10 episode. Not quite Tales from the Citadel, but very similar to in a lot of ways, and thoroughly enjoyable, and a near perfect start to the season. So yeah, 10 out of 10 for me. So 8 from you, 10 out of 10 for me. Should we average that out and say 9 out of 10 for episode 1?
Sure.
All right. 9 out of 10. So, moving on, I have the synopsis for Season 5, Episode 2, Mortiplicity. And boy, is this an episode. So we open with the Smith family being suddenly and violently assassinated by these advanced alien squids. But it's revealed that this Smith family is just a decoy family that Rick created previously. Beth criticizes Rick for cloning family members again after cloning her in season 4. And we just get a great montage of more and more decoy families being killed in hilarious fashions by these squids until Rick realizes that the decoys he created have themselves created their own decoy programs and generated more decoys, and those decoys have also created decoys, leading to what he calls an Asimov cascade, which is a chain reaction where all the decoy families just try to kill each other. And it's then revealed that the squids themselves are also a decoy family who have been going around murdering other decoy families. So our Smith family, the Smith family that we've been following, are captured by these monstrous scarecrow decoys who harvest skin, and only to be rescued by a wooden puppet decoy family with hilarious tinny voice boxes.
Yeah.
Which I loved that so much. Those voices, those voice boxes were, I was in stitches. So one Rick decoy activates another thing I love, a Star Fox 64 beacon, essentially summoning all the other decoy families to his location to fight into a massive melee battle. Rick eventually apologizes to Beth for cloning family members again. And our Smiths, we are led to believe, are the last Smiths standing after this massive decoy battle, until they are also killed by Mr. Always Wants to Be Hunted, who is just this little yellow guy.
It's like this dumb fucking guy from the cold open.
Yeah, with a target on his chest. And I mean, it's like he's like Mr. Meeseeks in that he's got a classic catchphrase, "Hunt me, somebody hunt me." And because nobody hunted him because of the entire decoy situation, he has now hunted them and killed them. I love his voice so much. Somebody hunt me. I love Mr. Always Wants to Be Hunted.
Justin Roiland. I know you do every voice on that show, but
God,
please continue doing it. You're so good.
Oh my God. Speaking of characters I want to see make a return, Mr. Always Wants to Be Hunted. I want to see
an episode that's just Mr. Poopy Butthole, Mr. Always Wants to Be Hunted, and Newt. And the three of them just do their own solo adventure.
Oh, and Mr. Meeseeks. I want to see him in there as well.
Yeah, I mean he's not really one of those yellow guys.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
But
yeah. I mean, who can say no to "I'm Mr. Meeseeks, look at me"? I love
the
him.
Kirkland brand Meeseeks. It's just the fuck you want.
I love it, man. So yeah, Mr. Always Wants to Be Hunted. And in the post-credit scene, it's revealed that, of course, our Smiths were actually in space the whole time. They're safe, and they're hanging out with Clone Beth. So there's that.
Yeah.
So yeah. It occurred to me when I was thinking about these episodes that this season, man, did it start strong. I gave episode 1 out of 10 of 10, and I'm giving episode 2 a 10 out of 10.
I was giving this one 8 out of 10 too. It was so fucking funny.
Yeah, Mortiplicity was fantastic. I loved it so much because you truly do not know. you do not know who you can trust or who's real or who's not the entire time. The whole thing is just a big puzzle that you're solving very slowly throughout the entirety of the episode, and it's just. That's the thing, is that you're solving the puzzle, but it's nonstop as well. The moment you start to settle in with one Smith family, they get killed and they get replaced by a different Smith family, and you're introduced to all these different decoys. You've got the Scarecrow family, you've got the wooden puppet family, you've got the Sesame Street family.
Yeah.
You've got the family posing as the squids. You've got the Star Fox Rick, which I love. You've got like the ceramic Rick, who's like doing like a Fear
he
and
like
Loathing in Las Vegas
yeah.
thing.
It's
Like,
because they took a concept for an episode, which could have just been, what if like, there were decoy families and they're like hunting decoys.
yeah.
And then they just take that to the extreme. It's like, what if the decoys made their own decoys and those got progressively worse? And like, how can we explore this? And then there's like, kind of like the Citadel of Ricks, there's like a, decoy hideout of like all these decoys that don't want to be hunted by other decoys. And it's like,
Right.
only on this show can you get something that explores such a dumb topic so far.
And pull it off so well,
yeah,
too.
they do such an excellent job of it as well.
Yeah, and and before I forget, also, one of the wooden voice box decoys, Jerry, he varnishes himself so that he could survive and live forever. But much to his horror, because he's varnished himself, he can't die. And so first he gets used as part of a beaver dam, and then he just time goes on and goes on and goes on. And next thing you know, he's being used as part of a mirror in like a steampunk western, part of history. And then finally, history fully loops back upon itself, and it's Christianity again, and he's being used as part of the crucifix for the new Christianity. I love it. Mortiplicity is fantastic. 10 out of 10. You said you're giving it 8 out of 10?
8 out of 10 again.
Okay, so that's another 9 out of 10. Fantastic. Moving on to episode 3, A Rick Convenient Mort. Definitely very different than the previous 2 episodes. So, in the A story, Morty falls in love with Planetina, who is like this female Captain Planet parody. But first he has to deal with her controlling handlers, the now very dysfunctional grown-up Tina-Tears, or kind of like the Planeteers.
Yeah.
So first Morty fights the Fire One. He bites off his finger, steals his ring, and then burns him. And then he just goes on an absolute killing spree, taking out all the rest of the Tina-Tears, and stealing and using their rings against them in a very cool, like, elemental battle, which I thought was neat.
Do you know what's really concerning to me? Rick has corrupted Morty so much. Like, Morty is fine with killing people now. Like, killing aliens, that's one thing. But, like, killing fellow humans, he didn't
without breaking a sweat.
Yeah, he didn't flinch. He didn't.
No, yeah, he just once he started, he burned the Fire One. He used the Air One to explode the head, to explode her head. He takes the Water One's ring and impales him with ice. And so on and so forth. I forget how he takes out the Dirt One, but also just the fact that it's not like Earth or something like that. It's just dirt. But yeah, it's a really cool fight. And now he has all the rings, which he then uses to free his love, Planetina. And they have this love montage where they're hanging out, and Morty's just so smitten with Planetina, and she's going around, and they're in love with each other, and she's going around doing things, helping the planet, being a good environmentalist. But then Planetina starts to take a little bit of a dark turn, and then a very dark turn, ultimately culminating in her caving in a coal mine, killing 300 coal miners. And Morty is devastated, because he really loves Planetina, and especially considering now that Jessica is no longer as much of a feature in his life, as at least as love interest.
Yeah.
But he just cannot cope with this dark turn that Planetina has taken. So he breaks up with her tragically in a very in a very emotional scene. And he could trap her in the rings again, so she can't hurt anybody anymore. But he can't bring us to do that either. So he gives her the rings, and she goes free. And we'll talk about what that decision means. But that's the end of that story, and it ends on a very sad note. Morty sobbing in Beth's arms, as the wonderful flower collection of Morty's face that Planetina gave him earlier wilts and is now very sad. Yeah. And just very quickly in the B plot, Rick and Summer, they travel to 3 different planets, all facing their own apocalypses. And because when you're in an apocalypse and everything's nihilistic, it's just 3 increasingly disgusting orgies that they all go to. Because as you were saying, this is, whereas in this season we started to see Morty become more like Rick, we also see Summer getting a lot closer to Rick.
Yeah.
And, Summer embracing Rick's nihilism in a lot of ways. And so they're going around, they're participating in all these crazy orgies. Rick falls in love with an alien named Daphne, who is just a fantastic elbow rack. Ultimately,
so fucking gross.
Out of left field. And then Summer averts the 3rd apocalypse by blowing up the meteor, earning Rick's begrudging respect, because ultimately that is something that is definitely very Rick. Averting a planet's catastrophe, not to save the people, but just to get back at somebody out of spite.
Just to ruin a single relationship, yeah.
Yeah, like that's very Rick. And the post-credit scene is a very awkward conversation between a father and son who were nearly very intimate in one of these planetary orgies before Summer blew up the meteor. So that is a Rick convenient mort. The B plot didn't make much of an impact, but
yeah, honestly, the B plot was a little disappointing to me. Mm-hmm. I really loved the A story. And that A story is like a 7 out of 10 for me, but the B plot is just like, I don't know, it was really weird. It kind of had that over the top kind of gross factor to it that Rick and Morty likes to do, but they may have taken it a little too far, I think. And yeah, it wasn't really as funny as some of the other episodes.
The B plot, one of the most disappointing parts about it was that it just took away from a really unique and good A story. And so if you had
really undercuts it.
Exactly, yeah. So if you had cut that out and just stuck with the A story, I think that would have easily have gotten this episode at least an extra point or 2 from me.
Yeah.
What score did you give it? Did you give it a score?
A plot I would give 7 out of 10, but B plot I think just brings it down to a 6.
Okay, so you're going 6 overall.
Which is unfortunate, yeah. So I have to go 6 overall.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 7 because I really like the A story. The B story does leave it. The B story does lose it those 3 points, but I do think I'm gonna give this one a 7. Just because the A story was really different, and it's a reminder that after a really breakneck, nonstop, hilarious first 2 episodes, it pumped the brakes a little bit, and it was very different because Rick and Morty is a show where, obviously it's a comedy show, and, there are a lot of episodes where it's laugh, 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 but it's easy to forget that Rick and Morty can be very poignant as well. And, the A story was definitely, it had a few moments where I did chuckle, but didn't really have any big laughs. It was just really engrossing to watch this kid who we really care about, Morty, who's been through all this stuff, just getting swept up in something very normal and relatable, this teenage romance, admittedly with, a Planetina, who is obviously, a planet, a Captain Planet superhero type character, but still, everyone can relate on some level with just being so smitten with somebody, and, and just watching him navigate this relationship, which is, I think, definitely the most mature romantic relationship that we've ever seen Morty entertain. Like, typically he's like a very immature 14, 15, 16-year-old, but in this case he really deeply cares about Planetina, and him falling in love with her, being willing to brutally kill people to save her, and then ultimately losing her when she turns out to be different from the person he first fell in love with. That was really powerful. And, that ending was touching, just him and Beth just sobbing and just talking about how he feels,
Yeah.
That's a level of emotion that, we don't get a ton of it in this series, but when we do, it really hits you. So that was a really powerful moment. The A story was really unique and really good, just not for the same reasons that the previous 2 episodes were really good, So that's why I'm giving it a 7 out of 10, because the A story was fantastic and very different, but the B story did bring it down. Now, I want to talk about Planet Tina for a moment, because I think another great feature of this episode is that it does act as kind of a catalyst for a really nuanced conversation, which is, you know, Planet Tina's methods. I mean, obviously, at the beginning, she's unambiguously a very good person. She's going around helping people, saving the environment. But as her methods get increasingly violent and despotic, culminating in her killing all those coal miners, it begs the question, Planet Tina isn't, her methods are wrong, but her point isn't necessarily wrong. Planet Tina's right when she says that we do need to take drastic and sometimes painful measures in order to, halt the existential threat of global warming and climate change. But at the same time, when you start talking about, well, obviously don't kill coal miners, but even the coal miners make a point where, it's like, hey, we're just out here trying to scrape by and make a living. We're not trying to end the world. We're just trying to do our jobs like we've always done. And, that's what ultimately Morty breaks up with Planet Tina over is, the fact that Planet Tina, he loves Planet Tina's goal and he loves her message, but her methods went too far. But it asks the question, well, then where do we draw the line? Because we can't do nothing, and we can't just, as much as we want to support the coal miners, we can't just have them, digging up and burning coal forever. But at the same time, we can't just close all the coal mines overnight and put thousands of people out of business. So what do we do? That's a really good conversation to have.
And it's one that, actually occurs over several different, episodes in this series. Not specifically the climate change one, but the idea of, the system itself is broken, and the only way to rebuild is to burn it down.
Right.
They have a lot of, pointed and unpointed metaphors for capitalism throughout the series, and just show how things can get really bad and kind of unfixable. But 300 people is, either a very large massacre or a very small genocide. It's like, but either way, it's kind of not the answer.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm glad you said that, because that you just made me realize something. That actually might be something that redeems the B plot a little bit, because in the B plot, you have planets who are just straight up facing apocalypses, the end of their worlds. And as we saw,
they're not doing anything about it. They're just kind of
exactly. And as we saw, I mean, sure, the apocalypse can be nihilistic and fun because nothing matters, but everyone's gonna die. So it's like we could keep burning the coal and continue our march towards irreversible climate change, and everyone will keep making money and electricity will stay cheap, and we'll all have a great time. But how many thousands, millions of people are going to die in order to make that transaction? But at the same time, obviously, again, don't murder coal miners and become kind of this despotic eco warrior as well.
Yeah.
So that's actually one thing that kind of, I think, redeems the B plot a little bit, because as we see with planets actually experiencing the apocalypse, it's fun, but how much fun is everybody dying in the end really worth? And back on Earth, we have that choice where we can make, and we're just kind of, we want to have it both ways, and in trying to have it both ways, we're really doing neither. So
yeah, we're just kind of delaying the process. It's a very slow burn.
Exactly. See what you did there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, there is no right answer. That could also be why Morty is so hurt, because he wants to help, but he doesn't know how. He just knows that the way she's doing it is wrong, but he can't correct her.
Right. But he also declines to stop her by giving her the rings. So he knows that she'll probably continue to go out and do things both good and bad. But at the end of the day, he he values her too much as a person to trap her again, and he still sympathizes with what she's trying to do, even if he can't participate in the ways she's trying to do it. So, yeah, really good episode. Can I talk you up to a 7 out of 10, or are you staying at?
Yeah, I think so. Seeing that kind of thematic connection. Yeah, I think in execution it still could have been better. This episode, the dragon episode from last season, they're just, I don't know. I feel like they take things a little too far. Like, sex humor is, humor. It can be funny, but I feel like there is an upper limit.
Yeah, definitely.
And also the poor animators that are forced to draw those things too. Like,
yeah, definitely. If you had no B plot and we spent more time with just the A story in this episode, then that could have bumped it up to an 8 or a 9. But as is, I think definitely a 7 out of 10. All right. Unfortunately, on to season 5, episode 4, Rick Dependence Spray. As you can tell already, I hated this episode. Okay. All right. So we start off. Morty is using, and there are so many sentences in this that I can't believe I'm going to say out loud, but here we go. Morty uses a horse semen extractor at Beth's horse clinic to predictable effect. Rick later on steals a barrel of this horse semen from the clinic to create a bioweapon that he plans to use to fight the Chud horse people, who are the cannibalistic horse underground dwellers. So in the course of creating this bioweapon, Morty is too ashamed to tell him that he has contaminated the horse semen, and Rick accidentally creates giant sperm monsters that just rampage and just start destroying everything. So the president recruits Rick and Morty on a mission to lure the sperm monsters to the Grand Canyon to nuke them. But just like we saw with the Suicide Squad, and this was actually the one time I laughed in the episode, because like in the Suicide Squad, the whole team of Marines just die immediately. They're completely useless. That was the one funny part of this episode that I laughed at. So Rick and Morty, they get Morty befriends a friendly sperm monster named Sticky, but they get imprisoned by the sperm monsters, and the queen sperm monster wants to use Morty to hook him up to the horse extraction machine to create more genetic material to create an army of sperm monsters. Meanwhile, and this is where the episode really lost me. Meanwhile, the military has taken one of Summer's eggs from one of her ovaries, grown it to giant size, and have installed it at the top of the Luxor Pyramid Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas to lure the sperm monsters there. So Rick and Morty, they get liberated by the Chud horse people, but they're not really liberated. They just get captured, and they're going to turn them into stew. And that was actually one of the funny things, was the little chant that the Chud people had as they were lowering Rick and Morty into the stew. I forget what it was, but that was funny. But never fear, they're saved by the Chud princess, who is pregnant with Rick's child. They form an alliance with the Chud to fight the sperm monsters. The sperm monsters are defeated at the Las Vegas Strip, but Sticky impregnates the giant egg, which is launched into space to create a giant incest baby. And the post-credit scene is the giant incest baby using an astronaut as a pacifier.
How many sentences did you write down there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Every single one of those was whack as fuck.
Yes. Yes, it was. Let's not waste too much time on this. I hated this episode. It was terrible. I'm giving it a 2 out of 10. I hated it.
Wow. Well, that low.
Oh yeah, and even that might be generous.
Wow. I didn't hate this one. Um, but it was really weird. It was a really weird premise.
And not just weird, but gross though. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a theory as to how this episode came into existence, but sorry, yeah, I'll let you continue.
No, I want to hear your theory.
So, I mean, yeah, well, so just, I give it the 2 points, just really pretty much just the 2 jokes that I laughed at, which were all the Marines getting killed immediately and the Chud horse chant. Those were the 2 times I laughed. So two laughs, 2 points. But yeah, 2 out of 10, terrible episode. I hated it. The episode was gross and not funny. Not certainly, yeah, pretty much not funny at all. The like the sperm monsters alone, like that's just like lowest common denominator. But then when you start talking about blowing up one of Summer's eggs to giant size and then creating a giant incest baby, it's like, what are we doing? Like, that is just so gross and unnecessary. And honestly, what it felt like is, it felt like the Rick and Morty writer's room, like, trying to, like, it wasn't even a matter of let's see how far we can go and get away with it. It felt like, it almost felt like they misunderstand who their audience is, because Rick and Morty, is a show that's very popular with teens, young adults like us, people, young people with edgy humor and that kind of thing. At least that's the kind of common conception. I actually know a lot of, middle-aged people and older people who actually really like the show. But, really? That's the, honestly, wow. Yeah, I have relatives of mine that like the show. But, it's typically, teens and 20-somethings, people our age,
Yeah.
And so I think that they think about those people, and I think that they thought of those people, think, well, you know what? How do we pander to them? Well, if it's just a bunch of teenage boys, let's just make a whole episode about masturbation and sperm monsters, and incest jokes are hilarious, right? That's edgy. And Rick impregnated this chud princess, and it's gonna be awesome. We're gonna have this cool Marine team. They're gonna go in and they're all gonna die immediately. And the sperm queen wants to extract more sperm from Morty. And it's like all this stuff that they think like a barely pubescent teenage boy would find hilarious, and it's just not. It's odd to me, because you have the writers of one of the absolute smartest shows on television today, and they're trying to be stupid, and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know why they went so far out of their way to dumb down their own writing to create an episode that they think a certain segment of their audience and their fan base will be into, because they'll just think that it's, it's all this stuff that they like, but it's not, honestly. Like, all the Rick and Morty, content that I've seen post this episode has been universally panned, pretty much. I haven't seen one site, one video, one commentator defend this episode or say this was a good episode of television or a good episode of Rick and Morty. Yeah. So, yeah, terrible.
Yeah, I will say I'm a little hesitant to call it a smart show, and I think this episode is kind of addressing that. Because there is the whole stereotype of people being like, oh, you have to have a 200 IQ to understand the jokes in this show, and it's very lowbrow humor. And I think this could be the writers kind of addressing that and being like, this is definitively a lowbrow show. We have sperm monsters, attacking everyone, and it's like even edgier than just an episode all about fart jokes. And it's like, kind of setting the bar, or lowering the bar, I guess, to be like, this is the type of show we are. Kind of get used to it.
Well, that's the thing.
That doesn't make it good, though. It was still like a really weird and gross episode.
And that's the thing, and that's actually one area where I'm going to disagree with you, because while I agree that I don't like those people that say, oh, you need to be this like super genius to really appreciate Rick and Morty, I do think it is a very smart show, and we've seen that in episodes like Mortiplicity and like Tales from the Citadel, and like episodes like Total Recall from season 2. Like, this show is very smart on the whole. But I think that if you were someone who hadn't seen Rick and Morty before and you watched this episode first, then, well,
Yeah.
first of all, God help you. And second of all, you would arrive at the conclusion of what you just said, which is that this is just a lowbrow, dumb show that's only preoccupied with sex jokes and masturbation jokes and fart jokes and all this stupid shit, you know? So this was definitely a very stupid episode, but I don't think that's an indictment of the show. I still absolutely think Rick and Morty is a very smart show. You don't need to be a genius to appreciate it. I mean, anybody can appreciate it, but it is a very smart show.
Like I think so. I mean, the problem is kind of the language we use to describe it. I mean, saying it's a smart show kind of implies that it's really like intellectually challenging. I think what's more accurate is that oftentimes it's a very well written show. It isn't necessarily smart. I mean, it's still, uses a ton of lowbrow humor, but it does have. I mean, Dan Harmon is actually kind of a legendary.
Oh yeah.
TV writer. He knows so much about what he's doing, and like, this show is capable of having really emotional moments or incredible revelations, or just really tight writing. That doesn't necessarily make it smart, but it does make it I don't know, just it distinguishes it a little bit. But it's kind of funny because I feel like there's this, I want to call it like the curse of Rick and Morty. Because basically the process for the majority of these one-off adventure episodes is, let's take a premise that's really, really stupid and push it to its extremes. And sometimes that works really well. Like Mortyplicity was really funny and really creative. This was a stupid premise of, what if Morty was addicted to masturbation and then his sperm came alive and attacked people? And they took it to the extreme, which ended with an incest baby. And it's like, this is not, like, yeah, you took it to the extreme. It doesn't make it good.
But it's terrible.
Yeah. And yeah, so the approach is the same, but the outcome is very, very different. So I think that's something the show needs to be more careful with. I think that just kind of comes down to subject matter. I've never been a fan of the sex-heavy episodes of the show. They're just weird. They're just weird and gross.
Yeah, and I'll say for me, I hear you, and for me, my calculation is a little bit different, because for me, I don't really make a distinction between, or not a big distinction at least, between a smart show and a really well written show. For me, not every smart show is necessarily well written, but every well written show is smart. So, and I think that Rick and Morty's hit to miss ratio on episodes is so many more hits than misses. The writing is so, and the writing talent in that writer's room is so strong that it's a very well written show and therefore a very smart show. So for me, I that's kind of how I approach it. I do think it is a smart show because it's a very well written show. But yeah, every once in a while you'll get an episode like this. Like you mentioned the dragon episode from season 4. Like I thought you were going to bring that up.
That's had so much potential. I mean, with the idea of, Rick is in a world that's powered by magic instead of science. He's really out of his element. And they could have, taken that to its extremes, but instead it's like, what are the extremes of becoming soul bonded with a dragon? Well, it's a dragon orgy.
Yeah. Like I thought you were going to bring that up as a reference point to this episode, because those are the two that I was
thinking it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are you going to give Rick Dependence Spray?
3 out of 10. Yeah. I didn't actively hate it when I was watching it, but it's just not great.
I did actively hate it because the 3 episodes before it were so strong that it felt like, what are we doing? We've just gone, you had so much momentum going off episodes 1, 2, and 3.
True. I feel like if you've been binging the series and then you hit that episode, it's like, it's like driving along the highway and then you suddenly fucking get a flat tire.
Yeah, and it's even worse than binging, because if you're just watching all of season 5 at once, at least after this you can get to the rest of the season and it gets good again. But if you're watching it, at the time, week by week, you get episode 1 fantastic, episode 2 fantastic, episode 3 really good, and then this, it's like, what? It's like, where are we going from here? Like, I hope we don't get more of this in the weeks ahead. So you're saying 3 out of 10. I'm saying 2 out of 10. I'll say this.
Just do run down.
Yeah, 2 out of 10.
Down.
Yeah. All right, episode 5, A Mortican Graffiti. All right, so Rick has to suffer through a karaoke night with Jerry to pay off a debt to Hellraiser Cenobites, who get off on Rick's suffering and his immense levels of cringe at just pretty much everything Jerry says and does. Eventually, Jerry realizes that he's the butt of the joke, and so the Cenobites take him to hell, thereby luring both him and Beth also into hell, both Rick and Beth into hell, so they can all torture each other for eternity, which would therefore give them pleasure. Eventually, Rick, Jerry, and Beth all escape by weaponizing the Cenobites' pleasure-pain, paradox against them, and they escape hell. They get out of hell. We'll talk about that. In the B plot, in order to impress the cool new kid at school, Bruce Chutback, Morty and Summer take him on a joyride in Rick's car, until the car's personality, the Keep Summer Safe voice from season 2.
Yeah, the car's AI.
Yeah, which that was another fantastic episode, by the way. I forget what it's called, but the one where they go into the miniverse and then into the teeny-verse and then into the microverse. I love that episode. Stephen Colbert was in that one. So the Keep Summer Safe voice takes over the night and does whatever she wants to do, because she never gets to go out, including hunting a gigantic Galactus-type alien, and also trying to flirt with this broy group of change formers at Space Lake Tahoe, which I just love that somewhere out in the universe there's just a space version of Lake Tahoe populated by
Space Lake Tahoe. In the Rick and Morty universe, we know there's a Space Lake Tahoe. We know there's a Space Mount Everest, or Mount Space Everest.
Yeah, and so
that's just so funny.
Yeah, so she's hitting on the Changeformers, but the Changeformers reject her because, and this is hilarious, because she's just a car, and they're Changeformers, so they bully her because she's just a car. And so Rick's car gets outraged, brutally burns all of them, and they get Morty, Summer, and Bruce Chutback all get arrested by the Federation because of the brutal violence at Space Lake Tahoe. The car has, admittedly, a pretty good idea to just pin the whole thing on Bruce Chutback. Morty and Summer get out of there, but Morty and Summer refuse to leave him, so the car just breaks them out of prison, then blows up the prison, and then they all go back to Earth. The post-credit scene, I love this post-credit scene. Poor Bruce Chutback, he's just had this incredibly traumatic night, and after all that, he gets mercilessly made fun of by all of his other classmates because he wore the same pair of pants 2 days in a row. And so now he went literally instantly from being the cool new kid to being Bruce Chutback, the guy who wears the same pair of pants multiple days in a row. So that was a Mortican Graffiti. So this was pretty much, whereas in episode 3 you had a kind of a very dominant A plot and kind of a less focused on B plot. This was like a perfect 50-50 split between the two of them. So starting with the A plot, I liked it. I thought it was cool. It was funny to explore, the inherent absurdity of these like Hellraiser monsters, because they derive pleasure from pain. But if they're experiencing pleasure, they don't like that, which causes them pain. But if they're in pain, then they find that pleasurable, and then so on and so forth. So naturally, they love Jerry because he just embarrasses himself so much and generates so much cringe. Because that's the other thing that they feed on. They love pain, but they love cringe almost as much. And Jerry is just a bottomless fountain of cringe. And so they essentially, as payment for his debt, they get Rick to bring Jerry to these karaoke nights. And just the whole aesthetic of the Cenobites and their like hell world was cool. And Rick, his house included a swordfish just through his chest, and Beth was like Pinhead, and like that was cool. And eventually they escape hell by just making the Cenobites face the inherent contradiction between pain is pleasure, pleasure is pain, pain is pleasure, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I don't remember how they did that, because do you remember how exactly they did that?
Well, they created this minigun that they mounted on this on one of the Cenobites, and I think it was it was some sort of sci-fi thing, but it involved essentially something that induced pain in the Cenobites, which caused them pleasure, which put them in pain, which caused them pleasure, and so on and so forth.
Or like it, or it either like, yeah, I thought it like reversed those, or it caused their pleasure senses to induce pain. So then, instead of feeling pleasure from pain, they just feel pain from the pain.
Right. Yeah. I think that's what it was. Yeah. I think that's what it was. But yeah, I liked the story. How about you?
I thought it was okay. For whatever reason, I felt like this episode was one of the less memorable ones. Not really for any particular reason, though. It just kind of was, I don't know, generic Rick and Morty a little bit.
Yeah.
It was cool seeing, Rick on an adventure with Beth and Jerry. That's not something we get a lot. And, we got to see, Morty and Summer team up, which is always fun. But I don't know. There was nothing really special about this episode to me.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, no, I think that the A story was definitely the more memorable part of it, but the B story was cool too. This like joyride in Rick's car that goes terribly wrong. Yeah, but I mean, it was it was funny watching the car get rejected by the Changeformers and
and dress up as a robot and then get discovered.
And killing a Galactus, that was pretty cool. I liked that. But yeah, I mean, what are you thinking of for a score for this?
My gut's telling me 5 out of 10.
You know
Very
what?
middle of the road.
Yeah, and I was thinking about giving it a 6, but I do agree with you that I think that this one, even though it wasn't bad and it certainly was a big step up from the previous episode, it just wasn't very memorable. I can't say that there was much I remembered from this episode without going back and looking up what happened in it. So
yeah.
So I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to come down from a 6 to a 5, say that this is a 5 out of 10. Because it was good, solid, but not very memorable. Maybe I'll rewatch it one day, maybe not. But not reinventing the wheel at all.
Yeah.
So moving on to certainly a more memorable episode, Season 5, Episode 6, Rick and Morty's Thanksploitation Spectacular. So, National Treasure style, Rick is trying to steal the Constitution, but Morty accidentally torches that along with the Liberty Bell and the entire Statue of Liberty, which reveals the hidden giant French assassin robot that has been hidden inside the Statue of Liberty the whole time. Which already I was already a fan of this episode.
Yeah, I loved the cold open, and then I felt bad because they just never addressed it ever again, and I was like, God damn it, this seems really cool.
Yeah, and so obviously the president is not a fan of this, so Rick has hatched a plan, and apparently he's done this before. What he's going to do is he's going to trick the president into pardoning him by disguising himself as a pardon turkey. and both him and the president are explaining their plans, and they both, it's like that thing in like a thriller where both sides are explaining how they're going to get the jump on one another, and they're both several steps ahead of each other. Rick has this incredibly detailed plan of how he's going to turn himself into a turkey to get himself a pardon. But the president has anticipated that, so he is turning a squad of soldiers and himself into a turkey to track down Rick and essentially stop him and expose him. So they track them down, and Rick, Turkey Rick, and Turkey President have this fight, and Rick essentially, he hits the president in such a way where his identification chip flies out of his mouth, and it gets eaten by another turkey, and that turkey then goes back into the control room and then gets turned back into the president. And so this new turkey president goes to Congress and essentially takes over the government with a combination of a team of turkey super soldiers and promises of higher congressional pay. Yeah. Those are the two things that you need to take over the U.S. government.
Another episode that explores the broken system in the United States.
Yeah.
Although in a much lighter-hearted way.
Yeah. And so Rick, Morty, and the president, they make it back to Rick's lab. They turn into humans again, and they team up to wage. Well, first of all, they have a very cute little Thanksgiving dinner with the president, and but then they team up to wage guerrilla war against the turkeys, and they uncover the crypt of the New World, which unleashes the turkeys' ancient enemies, these super advanced alien pilgrims and alien Native Americans. And Rick and Morty, they have to go into space to disable the Washington Monument before it can be deployed to turn all turkeys in the world into a master race. And the president gets into a fight with the turkey president, eventually impaling the turkey president with, of all things, a cornstalk. And Thanksgiving is saved. And in the post-credit scene, one of the soldiers who volunteered to get turned into a turkey, his battle with post-traumatic stress is a crate of blueberries gets turned over in the supermarket, and he reverts back into his turkey form briefly, and that's his PTSD.
Oh my god. Yeah, the way the show conveyed like the typical Southern military wife and that general community was so fucking funny, and it feels so accurate too.
Yeah, it was pretty much like the American Sniper of getting turned into a turkey for your country. But good episode. I really liked it. I thought that I like that this is some of the most we've ever seen of the president, who I really like the president character, and just his relationship with Rick is fascinating.
They're kind of rivalry.
Yeah, because of
over intelligence, but over power itself.
Exactly. I love their dynamic because, of course, Rick is the smartest man in the universe, so he doesn't need the president's approval. But at the same time, he kind of does, because if he gets out of line, the president can make his life a living hell for him and his family. So they have this they hate each other, but they have to grudgingly work together when Rick does some stupid sci-fi bullshit that the president needs him to solve. This was the most we've seen of him since the season 3 finale, where they had their big fight, the Rick, Shuri, and Morty date. But I really like that we got to see more of him. The whole plot of the turkey president taking over the government was really funny, and that even though he's obviously just a turkified version of the president, the entire Congress just goes along with him because he promised to pay them more. Yeah. The president has a really cool fight with his gobble-ganger at the end. I was waiting to bring that one out.
We've been friends for what, 9 years?
Yeah, and it's all over now.
Yeah, you're really putting that on the line.
Oh boy. But good episode. I'm thinking maybe 7 or 8 out of 10. I think that the only reason this episode might have been, the only thing that lost at some points is I think it felt a little bit flat considering it came out in July and not November. If it came out around Thanksgiving time, I think it would have been a little bit more effective. But as a completely out of time Thanksgiving episode on a show that doesn't typically do Thanksgiving episodes, I'm going to give it a strong 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd give this one like a 6 out of 10. I did enjoy it. It just felt a little rushed to me. Like everything just kind of happened so quickly. Like they explained their plans, and all of a sudden they're, dealing with the turkey president, and all of a sudden they're revealing this, alien race of pilgrims and Native Americans, and it's just like, it doesn't really give you time to breathe and laugh at the situation because the situation just keeps evolving too quickly. But that's really my only gripe with it. Really fun seeing the president again. I love how it implies that Rick has done this like countless times, where he's like turned into a turkey to get pardoned.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me a lot of? Years ago, South Park did a Thanksgiving special where it was like Thanksgiving, but with like the ancient aliens type twist, which it was very similar to this, where it was like, the pilgrims, they were aware of these ancient aliens and they had to battle these alien forces. And that was a great episode of South Park. And this was very similar to that. So can I get you up to a 7 out of 10? Would that be, or are you staying strong at 6?
Put it down as a 7.
All right, 7 out of 10. All right, and on to episode 7, Gotron Geresis Rickvangelion. So, tragically, Rick diverts a trip to Boob World because he spots the last he needs for the last ferret Gotron that he needs to assemble his collection of Gotrons. So it's him, Summer, and Morty, and they go to get this final ferret Gotron. And he then ropes the family into all piloting these ferret Gotrons so that he can stack them Power Ranger style and fight giant monsters. So eventually, like, this is going great. They're fighting all these giant monsters. It's awesome. But eventually he gets greedy. So he assembles 5 other Smith families from alternate timelines, and so that they can all pool their collections of Gotrons to create greater and greater stacks of Gotrons, because Rick is just obsessed with stacking more and more and more Gotrons to create even more elaborate super mega robots. And the whole time, Summer is narrating the growth of this scheme Goodfellas style, or the Godfather style, which that was probably the funniest part of the episodes. I loved Summer's narration.
I love the opening narration too, where it was like Morty was like, that was the end, and then Summer's narration takes over, and then Morty's narration is like, wait, can you hear me? I can hear you. Why can't you hear me?
Yeah, it was straight out of Goodfellas, and I loved it. After a while, Rick feels that the original family is holding him back, so he replaces them with a rival anime Gotron team who harbor these deep resentments towards Rick because, the Gotrons were always their thing. So once Rick, replaces the Smiths with this anime team, which there's another great scene where Morty gets, he gets abducted by this these anime people, and they're like holding him hostage in the back of a limousine. Also, any number of scenes from classic gangster movies. Yeah. But he brings them in, and they attempt to sabotage him and oust Rick. But he's saved by his Gotron is saved by the episode 4 incest baby who has come back, and his name is Naruto now. And in the post-credit scene, the giant alien monsters that they were fighting from the beginning of the episode are actually revealed to be very well-meaning do-gooders, and they're going to all these different places because they're trying to tell people the recipe for the cure to AIDS, but because they look like giant monsters, they just everywhere they go, they just start getting shot at and attacked immediately. Yeah. And it turns out the cure for AIDS is just stuff that everyone commonly has in their pantries. Like, it's super simple, like some oregano, a pinch of lemon, it's not hard to create, but nobody trusts giant monster-looking creatures. And that was Gotron Geresis Rickvangelion. I liked it a lot. This was a really good episode. I loved the Gotron stacking, and I loved the Goodfellas plot and narration. I loved all the betrayals and counter betrayals. I loved the vengeful anime team. And just seeing
I love how
like
the anime team is like its own race of aliens. Like that's just a
yeah.
different type of being as these anime characters.
Yeah, I loved it. I really loved it. This is just, classic Rick and Morty, great sci-fi plot line, funny, lots of good gags, good jokes. And this is another part of my theory about episode 4 is that the writers' room knew that they were really going off the rails in episode 4, so much so that because obviously all of these episodes were written and animated long before they ever aired, so
Yeah.
they knew at the time that this is going to be divisive at best. So if we're going to have this giant incest baby out there, let's at least have it do some good later on in the season so people feel like it at least had a point.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah, I was not expecting that reveal.
no.
Like I did not think they'd return to this thing, but
No, but yeah, Naruto saved the day. So, yeah, really good episode. I'm feeling 8 out of 10
I
on
was
it.
actually gonna put this at a 9 out of 10
Oh, okay.
because it's it also is one of those episodes that explores the dynamic between Rick and Morty and puts strain on their relationship. You see Summer being more like Rick, kind of indulging him and pushing Morty aside in the same way Rick does.
Yeah.
And you kind of learn the true value of Morty, which is that he's kind of Rick's heart. And without him, Rick will just destroy everything
Yeah,
until he
he'll just
destroys
keep going and
himself.
going and going. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was really fun to see that. I also loved at the end of the episode where the voiceovers turned out to be voice ovarians, which are like
Yes.
these alien earworms. Um, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, and this is, as we've seen on a number of occasions throughout the season, in episode 1, Rick gave Summer the job of going down to Mr. Nimbus's underwater kingdom to get the conch. In
Yeah.
episode 3, obviously they have their adventure, and then again here, you have Summer more and more kind of becoming Rick's consigliere, so to speak, kind of, his top lieutenant. And yeah, you know what? You're at 9. I'll come up and I'll join you at 9 out of 10. All right. Well, that's the end of my episodes, but I think you've got the next 3 covered for us.
Yeah, so that brings us to the final 3 episodes of the series, all of which are pretty plot heavy. Episode 8 titled Returnal Friendshine of the Spotless Mart. Which is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Sun, I think.
Spotless Mind, I think.
Spotless Mind. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what that title is a reference to.
It's a Jim Carrey movie from like 20 years ago. It's essentially a world where you can have this medical procedure done to remove memories. And so Jim Carrey gets this procedure so he can forget an ex of his, but he keeps, despite supposedly it's supposed to wipe the slate clean, he keeps kind of remembering, or having memories from this relationship and so on and so forth.
Gotcha. Yeah, so kind of in that vein, this episode is about Rick trying to repair Bird Person's mind after he was brainwashed by the Federation into becoming Phoenix Person. He's repaired his body, but his mind is still broken, so Rick has to, enter Bird Person's mind and explore his memories, where we run into kind of different memories of younger versions of Rick. One of those was like this kind of Blade Runner-esque Rick with like long hair and a trench coat and like is off hunting other Ricks. And then he decides to tag along even though he's a memory. And they're like chasing down Bird Person who's trying to destroy his own mind. But eventually they convince him to, let Rick fix him. Not because Bird Person wanted to join Rick as a friend again, but because he has a daughter who's in kind of the Galactic Federation's prison system.
Yeah, Federation custody.
Yeah. So they all escape. Bird Person flies off. But, this episode really explores the relationship between Rick and Bird Person, and the fact that, like, Rick is kind of desperate for Bird Person to be his friend. And it turns out Bird Person never really was a true friend to Rick, or never really wanted that relationship. Like the only way he was able to convince Bird Person to, like, let himself heal is, to reveal that he had a child. So his whole motive was purely selfish, and this was kind of his last ace. We see the Battle of Blood Ridge, where
I loved that.
Yeah, Rick helps Bird Person take on the Federation, and then asks Bird Person to join him on his kind of long adventure and quest to hunt these other Ricks down, and Bird Person just straight up declines. And it's like, why are they friends again? I don't know if they are.
I think that, I'll just say this. I also really like this episode. Very, very much one of the highest concept episodes we've seen of the series.
Yeah.
Very, very, very high concept. And it seemed like Bird Person, the reason he gravitated to Rick originally was because he liked what Rick was fighting for, and he liked it was like the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of situation. Bird Person was against the Federation, Rick was against the Federation, and beyond that, they got along. Like Rick was kind of this lost outcast, and Bird Person was kind of this lost outcast, and so they kind of found each other. But after the Battle of Blood Ridge, which again I have to compliment, that was really cool. Getting the reference to the Battle of Blood Ridge at the end of season 2, and to now finally be able to see what that was, because it just sounds awesome. The Battle of Blood Ridge, and actually see what that meant, and it was awesome. But after that, and Rick was talking about how he has this portal gun and he can go to a universe where they lost the battle. He could go to a universe where the battle never happened. He could go to any universe in any timeline, and how they could go anywhere, do anything, have all these great adventures. And Bird Person was saying, well, if we can just go anywhere and experience anything, and nothing we do matters because we can just go to another universe, well then what's the point? I mean, that's life without consequences, and what's the significance of a life without consequences? And, Bird Person really wasn't down with that. And, that's kind of what spoiled their relationship, because Rick took that personally. I don't think that Bird Person necessarily meant it personally. I think he just meant that I'm not interested in leaving this universe to go do whatever, because I'm fighting the Federation to make this universe better. And, I don't want to leave it. But Rick took his rejection of the Rick and Morty lifestyle as a rejection of him personally. And as you said, I mean, ultimately the redemption came not because Bird Person wanted to become Rick's friend again, but because Rick revealed somewhat self-servingly that Bird Person has this secret child from before Tammy died. Which I find the math on that very funny, because of course Bird Person is already half bird, half person, and Tammy is just a whole person. So that means that their kid is going to be 3/4 person, 1/4 bird. But as we saw in the post-credit scene, their kid is quite a fighter. So, going to follow in her father's footsteps. It was, that was the only way that Rick could stop Bird Person from self-destructing his own brain, was to get him to realize that, even if not for his sake, there is something else out there that that he can fight for, and that he should fight for. And that whole sequence when he's going into Bird Person's mind was really cool. And when they're like trying to break out by using the Morty's Mind Blowers device to remember, it wasn't happy memories. It was it was, but it wasn't upsetting memories either. What kind of memories were they using? I forget, but because one of them was like going to Squanchy's, bad stand-up phase, and
yeah, I can't really remember.
yeah, I don't remember what the predicate of the memories were, but they fight their way out with Bird Person's memory of Tammy, and yeah, Bird Person is redeemed. He is no longer Phoenix Person, but it doesn't seem like he's really going to be in Rick's life anymore. I'm sure Rick will be in his life, but he's just concerned about finding his daughter and breaking her out of taking her away from the Federation. So
yeah.
Very high concept, very high concept episode, but very good. Um, I'm feeling like this is a 9 out of 10.
9. Interesting. I could put it as a 9.
Okay, so we'll say 9.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then, well, did you have anything else you wanted to say about this episode?
No. I was going to say really good episode, and yeah, like episode 3, very different. A little bit more emotional, but it was very good.
Yeah, and a good setup to the finale. In which Rick and Morty almost jumped the shark, and Rick and Morty essentially break up. Morty is off fixing all of Rick's, adventure. There's like, the cookie president had been kidnapped by these fucking like cookie 10 Oreos style cookie terrorists, and like he went to this other world and plugged up a UFO sized hole in their dam, and just kind of fixing all these mistakes, which shows Morty as kind of the more empathetic one. And he goes to top off Rick's portal fluid by pouring Mountain Dew into it, but accidentally gets a little bit on his hand, which connects him to Nick. Rick learns about Morty's mistake, and essentially fires him, and says, "Time to pick a new partner." And spins this giant wheel. There's a lot of funny options on there. There's a Kyle
Jerry
2.
spin again.
Yeah, Jerry spin again. There's Kyle 2.0, which is a callback to fucking the
Mr.
first
Nimbus.
episode. Yeah. I like Kyle better. But it ends up landing on 2 crows. So Morty sees him like out in the yard collecting these 2 crows. So he goes off to find this person, Nick, in his hand portal. Turns out Nick is in a psych hospital after like trying to steal Rick's portal gun. And has like a portal stuck in his thigh. Morty tries to bust him out, and they get out of the psych ward. Go back to the garage to try to kind of break everything, get a portal gun, get some portal fluid, and become the Portal Boys and go on their own adventures. There's this funny scene where they're just demolishing the garage, and Jerry walks in and then like breaks this crystal and just turns into a puddle. And then that's where Jerry ends for the season. So I don't know if season 6 is still going to be a puddle, or what will happen with that. But Morty and Nick end up kind of getting into a fight because I think Morty doesn't really want to leave Rick, or wants to like still kind of help people, not just go do whatever they want to do, which is kind of what Nick wants, which makes Nick very similar to Rick. And Morty's like, I don't want this kind of relationship. So they get into a fight, but as the train is passing, Morty severs his own hand and then drops the portal hand into Nick's leg portal. And then Nick kind of turns into this Ouroboros and ends up getting swallowed into nothing. And then Morty goes back to Rick. Rick gives him a new hand. But Rick is like, yeah, I'm really getting along with these two crows. I think I just gotta kind of explore this relationship for a while. So the next episode we see
Well,
him.
before we get to that, because I do want to give a distinct score for episode 9 and episode 10. So
sure.
Episode 9 was quite good. For me, episode 9 feels a lot like it's kind of like an episode 5, Mordican Graffiti, where it's like it had a good concept and good gags, and it was funny, but I think its undoing is that it was literally paired with the season finale, which the moment you watch season finale, you've forgotten about everything that's happened in episode 9. And that's not to say that episode 9 was bad. It was just not what we got in the season finale.
It wasn't as heightened as what surrounded it. I wasn't crazy about this episode because it really just serves to set up the next episode, but they could have just done all of that in the last one.
I liked the interplay between Morty and Nick and how these two were, unwillingly linked together by having some portal fluid spill on them, and how they escape the prison by using their portals, like Nick says, Morty says like Jackie Chan, and so then Nick says so confidently, well then that must make me Chris Tucker, which is a very odd. I mean, it's rush hour, but I mean, it's it's odd how quickly he embraced being Chris Tucker. But that was cool, just watching the two of them, use these portals in interesting ways. And also just the logic of Morty severing his own hand so that when he places a portal inside another portal, the portals just collapse in on themselves, eternally, crushing, just not even crushing him, just rendering him non-existent because it's just, this, theoretical physics nightmare. And so I liked it. I thought it was pretty funny. 6 out of 10.
Yeah, that's where I was leaning. 6 out of 10. And then you also have Rick's whole adventure with the two crows, and he sends them to this bird planet, which turns out to be run by like super intelligent crows that make the crows intelligent. They go to attack Earth. Blah blah blah. Yeah, I don't know. Nothing too extreme, but the next episode starts with, Rick on his adventure with these two crows going after this villain Crow Scare, which turns out to be having a relationship with the two crows that's been going on longer than Rick's even been in the crow's life. Also just the fucking name Crow Scare. So dumb. Yeah, and then so the two crows break up with Rick. So he goes back to Morty, who went to him as a 40-year-old trying to pretend that Rick had spent 40 years with these crows. So Rick brings him back to the Citadel to have his age reversed, but the best they can do is make 2 incisions in his life and then graft the ends together, which leaves a 26-year-old Morty as a byproduct that they have to dispose of. But seeing that Rick C-137 is on the Citadel, Morty president invites him to dinner, where he then traps them.
And this is what we've all been waiting for since Tales from the Citadel, because of course I mean, there's everything about that episode is fantastic, but it also has a great ending where, one of the 3 plots that we follow is this election. I guess you could call it the main plot, if there is a main plot in that episode, where you have this election on the newly democratic Citadel, because it got absolutely destroyed in the Rick Shank Redemption in season 3, episode 1. They rebuilt it. Now it's a democracy, but obviously it's dominated by Ricks, because it's the Citadel of Ricks. But eventually,
I guess that would make it more of an Eric-tocracy.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's like a democracy in the sense that like Russia is a democracy. Like, they have elections, but nobody doubts who's going to win. But in that story, through a careful exploitation of Rick and Morty tensions and targeted assassinations and just generally presenting himself as a Morty acceptable to Rick's, he manages to win the election in a squeaker victory, and he begins his term in control by just murdering everyone who could be in opposition to him.
Yeah.
And so we have not been back to the Citadel since. And it's like, well, what is the Citadel going to be like? I mean, we know that Evil Morty has established some kind of authoritarian dictatorship here, but is that going to be like some dystopian vision, or what is that going to look like? And it turns out, I mean, it is different, but maybe not as different as we had thought it might be.
Yeah, it's yeah, it turns out he's been, when he got elected, he's been harvesting Ricks, killing them to scan their brains to try to get the schematics of the Citadel itself.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just gonna get all these memories and figure out which each individual universe that each Rick is from.
Mm-hmm.
But once he has C-137, it's revealed that he's kind of responsible for the Citadel being built, because it turns out that backstory we saw where Diane and young Beth are killed was true.
Yeah,
he goes on this hunt for this this Rick that's the leader of this gang of Ricks. And he just goes on this massive Rick killing spree, which eventually causes this council of Ricks to get together with that Rick to have him help build them a Citadel instead of killing all of them, so they wouldn't be bothering him anymore. And now that Morty's in charge of this Citadel, he's been trying to figure out every single universe that has a Rick in it, essentially. Because as we know, there are infinite universes. But it turns out Rick has invented this thing called the central finite curve, in which he has separated all of the universes in which he is the smartest being in the universe from all of the other infinite universes. And Evil Morty has decided that he wants to leave that. He's sick of Rick. He wants to truly get rid of Rick by going to a place where Rick is not the dominant being. To kind of break the cycle of, Rick's, cloning and, mass producing Mortys.
Yeah.
Or their own uses.
And it should also be said that he pretty much liquidates all the rest of the Ricks on the Citadel by poisoning their
So he hacks all their portal guns so they go to only places where they'll just instantly die.
Yeah, the blender dimension.
Yeah. And he takes over their Operation Phoenix things, so they're all rerouted, and he essentially in one move destroys the Citadel and uses its collective energy to open this massive rift in the universe, in which he escapes in this tiny pod, leaving the central finite curve and escaping through a yellow portal, which we have never seen before and is super exciting, which leaves Rick and Morty on this kind of Citadel ship with a bunch of other Mortys adrift in space with no portal fluid.
Yeah, the former Morty town from Tales from the Citadel. Yeah. There's a lot there's a lot to this season finale. So first of all, I bring up Tales from the Citadel because there was a lot of well-earned curiosity as to what is the Citadel going to look like when we visit it again. And it was, I won't say it was disappointing. Maybe it was a little disappointing, though, because I guess I wanted it to be more dramatic, the state it would be in when we did finally return. But ultimately, it was one thing this episode did was that it was very self-referential. Rick was, he was making comments like, the moment, President Morty reveals that he's evil, we're out of here, and all this stuff, and the Citadel runs on canon, and all this stuff. It's very self-referential, which, I mean, yeah, no, that happens in Rick and Morty. You'll get those self-referential things from time to time, and those self-aware elements from time to time. But I guess I was hoping for a little bit more. But at the same time, I can understand thematically why they didn't want to overdo it and really, have fun with it, because that was Evil Morty's plan. I mean, he was really presented as like the mustache twirling villain in Tales from the Citadel, but as we see here, he's not so much evil as just fed up,
Yeah.
and he's unscrupulous. He'll kill whoever he needs to get what he wants, but he's just fed up with Rick. He's fed up with the exploitations that Ricks have been inflicting on Morty's.
I mean, he burned down the system.
Yeah.
Burned down the broken system.
Yeah, and it's not that he's evil. He doesn't really want power. He just wanted to get out of there. And the key to getting out of there was to get into power. And so when we return to the Citadel, it looks very normal, but you do notice that there's a lot more. The Morty to Rick ratio is off here. There's a lot more Mortys than Ricks. And of course, we go on to see why. And when we do see Evil Morty for the first time again, he's not even wearing a suit. He's just dressed like business casual, because he's already got what he needs. He never expected Rick C-137 to come back. He was just gonna continue going through Rick by Rick, killing whoever he needs to in order to reconstruct his central finite curve so we can get out of here. But once Rick C-137 comes back, well then, one-stop shopping. Why worry? That. Yeah, and so at that point he got what he needed, and yeah, he had a really, really fascinating line, which is that Evil Morty is not an evil version of Morty. Evil Morty is just the inevitable conclusion that all Mortys arrive at when they realize the truth, kind of like in The Matrix, when Neo sees the truth, the whole facade comes crashing down. So it's the same thing here, Evil Morty, he's not evil. I mean, he is evil, kind of, he does evil things, but it's not that he's an evil person. It's that he's just the Morty who has seen the full scope of Rick's cruelty, and he's fed up with it. And so he has, played out this whole scheme to perfection. I mean, his plan worked perfectly from beginning to end. And he did what Rick couldn't do, because Rick has destroyed the Citadel, but what Evil Morty's done is he's not only destroyed the Citadel, but also he's liquidated its entire population, so it cannot come back.
Yeah.
And he left this universe, and now he's got his own portal gun with yellow portal fluid. And I mean, will we see him again? Of course we'll see him again. I mean, there's no way that can't come back.
Yeah, the narrative potential that this episode left is astonishing.
Yeah. But now are we going to have a show set in two different universes is my question.
I don't know. I don't know, what they're planning. I don't know if it's going to. I think the first episode of season 6 is going to pick off right where they left off, where it's going to be them kind of stuck on the Citadel ship trying to figure out how to get home.
Yeah.
Beyond that, is it, I don't know if they're going to go after that evil Morty, or if like just Rick wants to go after him, or I think my prediction is that, we'll have that first episode, which will be narrative focused. It's just, how do they get back to their norm? Then more kind of wacky adventures. But I think the main difference being this is one of the last Ricks out there.
Yeah.
There are very, very few other Ricks left.
Yeah.
Because basically every Rick that was on the Citadel, which was most of them, got killed.
Yeah.
And also, we don't know what happened to the, gang leader Rick. I don't think he'll come back though. I think that would be pushing it a little too far. But yeah, and then we're going to see something towards the end of the series or for the finale where, Evil Morty returns, either having become the dominant force in some other universe or accidentally bringing back something that is stronger and smarter than Rick.
Mm-hmm. Because that's another interesting thing is that Evil Morty has now gone into a universe where Rick is not the smartest person in the universe, and presumably that would make him the new smartest person in the universe. So
Possibly.
Are we going to have, possibly. So are we now going to have Rick and Morty and then, split screen Rick and Morty and then Morty and Rick? Or, where it's now you have Evil Morty
and
a good natured Rick?
We might get one episode that follows Evil Morty. And then maybe he'll return for the finale.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think the overall trajectory of the series is now Rick is going to be dealing with threats that he can't outsmart or overpower. And it's, how does he get out of these situations? And I think it's going to be more of Morty saving Rick.
Mm-hmm.
And, Rick kind of discovering that he can't just use Morty. He has to rely on Morty for help.
Yeah, and that's another thing I really liked about the finale is that, the last we see of our Rick and Morty, as you said, they're now stranded on this floating, remnant of the Citadel with no portal fluid and, no clear way out. But one thing they did gain by the end of this episode is that they remembered why the two of them need each other. It's not just because Rick tolerates Morty because the inverse brainwaves. It's because they genuinely have come to rely on each other and they genuinely care about each other, though they're both loath to admit it. And, I think that we leave our Rick and Morty closer than at any point than they've been in a long time. I mean, seasons going back, you would have to say like almost like a season 1 level, I would say. So I like that. Now that we have this whole new paradigm with Evil Morty and what's going on with him, our Rick and Morty are kind of reset back to square one because they've been gradually growing apart and more independent from each other. But now they're right back to where they recognize they need each other and they're going to have to start being on the same page again. So I did like that. So where are you going to rank episode 10?
10 out of 10 for me. It's right up there with Tales of the Citadel. Just the narrative potential that this episode has is so great that I have to rank it that high.
Yeah, the narrative potential is huge. For me, it's an 8 out of 10. Very good, and I'm very excited to see what this sets up going forward. But just in terms of what we have here, I think that I wish that we could have maybe explored a little bit more the implications of returning to the Citadel and Evil Morty's plan and the central finite curve and all that stuff. Because they explained it and it was a good, entertaining episode, but I feel like it was a little bit rushed. I would have loved to have spent more time with it and less time on the two crows. The two crows, it was a funny gag from episode 9, but, if we're going to start tackling subjects this big, I think we could have focused on that a bit more. So, very good, but I wouldn't say a 10 out of 10 for me. And also, just in general, it was a little confusing, Central Finite Curve. I had to watch a few videos to understand exactly what was going on. But very good. So, average that out and say 9?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have a problem because in this 10-episode season, we have 5 9 out of 10s.
No.
So we have to pick one that is the best episode from this season. We have, our choices are episodes 1, 2, 7, 8, and 10.
I mean, my choice is 10. I think the series finale was I think that is the episode of Rick and Morty that I've rewatched the most, just out of sheer excitement.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I watched it like 5 times.
Wow.
Like,
okay,
oh my God.
That is high praise. That is high praise. Yeah, for me, it's tough. It's really quite tough, I have to say. But for me, it was Mortiplicity. That's the one that I'm going to put at the top of my list. Mortiplicity, it had everything. It had an incredible, intricate, complex, multi-layered sci-fi story. It had great jokes. It asked interesting questions. It kept you on the edge of your seat. It was nonstop. Yeah. I mean, it didn't have the same emotion as like an episode 3 or an episode 8, but I mean, it was just so funny. And
But
I mean,
it's like classic Rick and Morty, and
classic.
it's just
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely classic. And so, I mean, I was laughing nonstop. So for me, it's episode 2. But I do want to give honorable mentions to episode 8 and episode 1 and the season finale. I mean, all of our 9 out of 10s are fantastic.
Yeah.
But for me, it's episode 2. Mortiplicity was my best of the season. And from there we have 3 7 out of 10s, episodes 3, 6, and only two sevens, episodes 3 and 6, which that checks out. We had 1 6, episode 9. We had a 5, episode 5. How fitting. And we had, of course, way down in the basement, we will never speak of it again, episode 4. And
what was that one about again?
Yeah, I don't know. I've already gotten my eternal sunshine.
I'm not doing a bit. I want you to recount the plot for me right now.
No, you could not pay me enough. I will not say those words again, or else I'll be getting a knock on my door from the FBI.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's it was a season that had some of the best jokes and gags, but also some of the most heartfelt episodes that we've seen. Particularly episode 3 stands out for me in terms of heartfelt. Episode 8 too, but episode 3 just because that was really different, and it was touching. The love story. That's not what you'd expect from Rick and Morty, but it worked. It worked well. So yeah, season 5. Great. Easily, well, I won't say easily because season 2 is also great, but this I think is my second favorite season. Season 3 is still at the top because almost every episode was an 8, 9 out of 10, but this is close and definitely a step up and step forward from season 4. So the only thing we've left to talk about is where do we go from here?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think the any episodes that have multiple Ricks are going to be far between if we get any at all. I mean, it's possible that C-137 is just the last Rick out there.
Yeah. I mean, the things that we have to, the plot threads that we have to follow back up on going into season 6 or at some point in the future is Bird Person finding his daughter. Mm-hmm. Space Beth is still out there, although I don't know that after Mortiplicity.
I think she's just gonna be kind of like
she'll be, maybe we'll see her again, maybe not. She's not gonna be a main cast member, but because they really went all out with cloning on Mortiplicity, so we might not see her again in season 6, but I mean she's gonna come back in some capacity. The Federation is a big one. Obviously we got a big.
What's up with them?
Yeah, we got a big Federation episode in the season 4 finale, and they were very much in the background here. And obviously, Evil Morty, what reality has he gone to? And also, Mr. Poopy Butthole, because one thing you didn't mention was the post-credit scene for the finale.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a very poignant monologue at the end. He's done this a few times in season finales. I mean, his message was, I think, don't get so caught up on what's happening in the present that you forget about the people in your life that are important to you.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. It kind of went over my head the first time, but But yeah, I mean, it's no coincidence that he keeps getting these big moments to shine at the end of seasons. So he'll pop up again in some more prominent capacity. What we didn't get, which everyone was saying that we would get a Vindicators episode this season, we didn't get that. So I think we're gonna meet them again.
I thought the Vindicators essentially disbanded.
Like
they all got killed off except for the last.
Yeah, but they'll come back with a new roster. I mean, they already did that once. So
yeah, I know Dan Harmon loves to, razz on Marvel. So
yeah, especially now that Marvel's poaching all of his writers.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are all things I think we're going to follow up on. If not in season 6, then it's definitely in the future. But great season, and this is the first time I realized that we're talking about just a good old-fashioned, plain Jane linear cable TV show. But it's one of the best shows on right now. It really is. And yeah, they've done it again for the most part. They've done it again.
Yeah, I'm definitely very excited. Unfortunately, we will have to wait a little while for it to come back, but
yeah.
Seems like now that they have more of a full team and more support from Adult Swim, it will be regular. There won't be as many delays and
yeah, they got like 100 episode order, so yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, so yeah, but really good season.
Really good, really good. So with that, I think that's everything. Thank you all very much for watching. As we said at the top, we've got a Shang-Chi special coming up for you next week, so look forward to that. That's going to be a lot of fun. And until next time, I've been Jonathan.
I've been Reid.
Thank you very much for your patience as we've been on this end of summer hiatus, and we're excited to get back into it. And we will speak to you again next week with another review. Goodbye.
Good night, everybody.